What is up, everybody? We are on mile 6.5 of a 24-mile long run that I am doing to get ready for the M2M 55-mile Ultramarathon in May. So I only have about a month and a half left. So I'm really focusing on specificity of training and the different type of terrain that I'll actually be running on this 55-miler. So let's get a couple more miles in and we'll start talking a little bit about how important it is to actually train on the terrain that you're going to be running for your ultramarathon. This was one of the biggest lessons I learned on both of my ultras that I ran a couple years ago. So let's get some miles in and we'll start talking about it. Let's see what we can get done on this long run. Just to make sure that I don't forget any details of the M2M Ultra, the 50-mile race that I'm going to do in May, I'm going to throw it over to Studio Wayne, our editor Wayne, to better explain what I'll actually be running in about a month and a half.
The M2M Ultramarathon is a 55-mile race going from Manchester, New Hampshire to the summit of Mount Monadnock. And we're going to be starting in the city and taking the roads all the way to the trail. That's going to be 60% of the race is going to be on the road/pavement. And then once we actually get to the trail, there's going to be 20% roads and 20% trail all the way up to the summit of Mount Monadnock. We're going to be running down that actual mountain and then into the headquarters will be where we will be finishing off that race. Now the biggest thing for this race is going to be about the elevation gain, which is about 6,500 feet plus of elevation gain throughout the whole course.
What really stuck out to me is the 60% pavement, 60% trails, and 60% dirt roads. Also, one big thing, it's going to be that 7,000 feet of elevation gain. So going back to specificity, I'm making sure that most of my long runs kind of emulate that actual ultramarathon. So right now I am back on the pavement. I actually started on pavement, went to trail, and then back on pavement now. So I'm really mixing it up. I'm going to be running the perimeter of this state park for about 20 miles. Then we're going to be hitting those trails and getting some summiting in. We are 13.2 miles into this 25-mile long run, and I am getting absolutely worked. I was not expecting these hills to be so steep, so I'm going to get a lot more elevation gain than expected, but it's good. Make my legs nice and strong. Got a couple rest days after this, so hopefully I'll benefit from the stimulus of just crushing my legs for probably going to be 4 hours of running. Oh, this is especially good because this is probably how the M2M road course is probably going to be. Really steep hills, probably for about 35 to 40 miles. And then we go on to the Monadnock. I don't know how to say it. Monadnock mountain and summit up there. With that actual summit, it's going to be a lot of elevation gain all at once. I'm super tired legs after running on that pavement for so long. Now this is 100% what I was saying about the specificity of training. This is definitely what I should have done for my first ultramarathon, which was a complete road ultra 100K. And all my training was pretty much done flat, if not -10 elevation gain, just because I was in Rhode Island, down by the ocean, and there's this awesome bike path that just skirted the ocean the entire time. And it was about 20 miles long. So I did a majority of my training on that actual bike path. And when you do that, you pretty much set up your paces. And I knew what pace I could run for how long, but it was completely flat. So when I got hit by all those rolling hills on that first ultramarathon, I tried to run my regular flat pace and got absolutely destroyed. Just chickens. And a lazy horse. So I felt good on the first 20 miles or so, but then all that gain on that 100K really caught up to me. In the last maybe 10, 20 miles, my legs were absolutely destroyed. And not only from the gain, but definitely that downhill. So running on courses like this, finding those rolling hills, even if you have to travel a little bit, I travel about 45 minutes from my house. It is 100% necessary if you're actually trying to not die on your first ultra or your next ultra. Another thing with these simulation runs is testing your gear. Now, on the 100K, I wore the Trail Gloves 4, which are like super minimalist shoes, pretty much just a piece of rubber. And I wore those for a road ultramarathon. And if you guys don't know, or if you guys haven't guessed, that was a huge mistake. My feet, my legs, everything were absolutely destroyed. So now I'm in the Ultra Touring 4s, and it's a little bit more forgiving when you're on the pavement. When you're on the trail, you don't have as much feel or ground feel, but I think the cushion is actually worth it, in my opinion. Now, when I did do the Grindstone 100, I was running with this guy that ran the entire thing with the Vibrant 5 fingers. So he built up his feet through years and years, and they were like super strong, and he was able to just scamper along the trails with those 5 fingers, no problem. Saw him at the end of the race, and he didn't even have a blister. So if you have the time, or you have some fucking awesome jeans and you have monster feet, then you can probably get away with that. But definitely trying to figure out what shoes work best for you on what terrain is going to really help. We are at 15.8 miles, and we are on the second iteration of this long run. We're on the dirt roads, so dirt roads are really nice to run on, nice and soft for the landing. But especially around this time of the year, they get super muddy. So having to skip behind or skip over ponds, make sure your feet don't get wet, is super important. Making sure you're cognizant. I always drone out on pavement, but I try to stay a little bit more focused when I'm on a dirt road because of something like this. Heel to toe through the mud. All right, we are 20.3 miles in, hitting the single track, or it's more like a double track, making our way up the actual summit. Now all the snow and ice is melting on here, so there is quite a lot of moisture. Oh, there's actually some ice still, but there is still quite a bit of moisture on the actual trail. A lot of big puddles that I'm having to navigate through. We're about 21 miles in on the single track now, going up, summiting. Had to pull this out just so I could force myself to calm down a little bit. Got really excited and started bombing up the hill. But climbing this really leads me to another thing that I'm still kind of learning, but that's the technique of actually climbing and making sure that your center of mass is still really stable and in the middle. So that's leaning forward, putting your hands on your knees, driving up really steep, or there's some techniques with your trekking poles that you can use to make sure that you're not leaning back or leaning too forward while you're climbing up. That's the same thing that goes with going down, kind of leaning back, staying straight, making sure your center of mass is right in the middle. All right, we made it to the top. So this kind of going back to what I was saying about climbing, that's definitely something I wish I did for the Grindstone 100, because I was definitely just trying to bomb those hills and not using really good technique. I was hitting my heel a lot while going up and down, and I wasn't really training that at all. So that's what led to on mile 80, my legs just turning into absolute sausages. So definitely making sure that my body is ready for the actual pounding of going up and down, and simulating these actual races is going to help me out a lot in the long run, and especially on my next ultramarathon, just because just like this run, it's going to be a lot of time on pavement, rolling hills, and then that really steep climb, I think about 2,000 feet of elevation gain up that mountain, just like what we did now, just to get up to here. And it's a pretty view, but my legs are absolutely smoked. Got to get in a couple more miles in. It's all going to be downhill for the most part, so I'm going to see how my tired legs can actually take that pounding as I work my way down this mountain. All right, let's go. So as I work my way down, one of the biggest things, and I said this quite a few times, is running downhill. I was definitely not ready for that. So making sure that you have enough training going downhill is a really big thing, just because there's an immense amount of pressure that is putting on your knees and your quads while you're running down. Now, one thing that has really helped me is as I'm working my way down, I increase my cadence. So I have kind of like I'm running hot feet pretty much down this hill. Keeps me on track, keeps my footing, and making sure that I'm not going too fast or too slow. One of the biggest things that I was doing when I first started running downhill is actually braking. So I was kind of leaning back and braking, and that's putting so much stress on my legs and my body, and that will lead to sausage legs. So definitely put in some work. Find a good mountain that you can run down and just do those hill repeats to really get that technique down. I'm still working on it. I'm still building up my knees, still building up my leg muscles, but it's something that we all should be working on if we're going to be running in these mountains like crazy people. Woo. All right, so we're on the last little bit, just hitting our incline. We're about at 24 miles. Just gonna get a little bit extra in just because I overshot my run on the pavement. But one big thing that I was thinking about is nutrition. So these simulation runs are so important, just because one other thing that I was thinking about is nutrition. So these simulation runs really help you understand how long you're going to be on different terrain and how much nutrition you're actually going to need. When I'm on the road, I tend to run a little bit faster, and it's a lot harder just because there's no tree cover, and then the black asphalt radiates the heat. So it's a little bit hotter. So I tend to drink a lot more water. And then in the mountains, it could easily take, had a nasty booger, sorry about that. But it could easily take about 2 to 3 hours just to finish up 10 miles on trails or when you're climbing up a mountain. So you're going to be eating a lot more. I carried one extra packet of goo just because I knew it might take a little bit longer, and I almost had to dig into that extra goo just because I was out there for so long. So definitely understanding what to eat, what to bring on these mixed trail races. One big thing that you learn from these simulation runs and training like this. Ooh. All right, there you have it, 24.43 miles.
There we have it. Long run is complete. Unfortunately, the GoPro did die. I recorded this whole outro, and unfortunately, I was just talking to a GoPro that was absolutely dead. So that's awesome. Just a psycho in his car talking to nothing. But anyways, that long run, I did get absolutely work during that long run. It's a lot later in the day. Got all cleaned up, shaved, put on the Dragon Ball Z sweatshirt. Now nice and toasty inside the house. But I may sound like a broken record, and I'm going to be repeating this over and over again, but training for the ultra that you are actually going to be running is so important. Specificity of training and making sure that you're running on the terrain that you're going to be running on, making sure that you're testing out all your gear, especially your shoes and the things that you're going to be wearing the entire time you're on the actual trail or road or whatever type of ultramarathon you are actually running. You need those reps on that terrain. You need those reps with your gear, and you need those reps just being on your legs for that long. So make sure that you are getting in your long runs, you're testing out everything, and you're out there crushing it every single day. The more that you run, the more you're going to learn, the more you're going to become better and stronger and